Cocainum.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Small Screen. I hope you guys are doing very, very...
Hello there.
Yeah, it started already. We've got a very exciting show for you guys today because we've got Graham Nolan on the show with us. He's a comic book artist. Mainly, has done a lot of stuff with Batman, has done a lot of stuff with DC, but also doing his own projects now. So we've got Graham on the show today to talk about his career and what he's doing next, and everything about him, really. And we're really excited to have him on. And I suppose before we get started, I'd like to say hello to everybody in the chat. So hello to Roberto or Bobby, sorry, hello to Sean, hello to Kazax, and hello to that James guy who is producing the show today. So shall we just go ahead and get Graham on the show?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hello, Graham. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Edward. How are you tonight?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a real pleasure talking to you. I'm really excited because there's a lot of stuff that you've done that I have enjoyed, really thoroughly enjoyed looking at and reading, of course, but looking at your artwork. So I suppose we should start off with your career. How did you first get into all this stuff, or comic books and artistry?
Well, I started out as a monster kid. You know, I saw from your intro you used Atomic Monster as your as your intro.
Yeah.
I loved monster movies, and there were monster magazines growing up as a kid that used to have comic stuff in the back, you know, or articles on comics. And so I first started seeing, you know, the stuff that was being published through the monster magazines. And then in the 6th grade, my teacher brought in a stack of comics for the kids to read at recess.
Yeah.
And one of them was this Justice League comic, and it had all these characters that I knew from the TV shows like Superman and Batman and Aquaman. And I just fell in love with it. And so I just started copying them, drawing them. And that's when I decided right then and there, that's what I wanted to do. At 12 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life.
And how did you just set about going into that? Like it's a pretty niche career move to do, like to do that sort of thing. So like how would someone that's looking to get into it, or talk about your specific path?
You know, I just took all the art courses I could, all the drawing courses I could, figure drawing, design, perspective courses. Then I went for when I got out of high school, when I was in high school, I was in advanced portfolio classes. And then I went to the community college, took art there for a year. And then I discovered the Joe Kubert School. Mm-hmm. I went to Joe's school, which really opened my eyes to the business and how to create comics.
Yeah.
I went there a year, ran out of money, went back home to Florida, went to community college for another year. Saved up money, went back to Kubert's, ran out of money again.
Yeah.
Money seems to be a problem. But I started getting work at that point. I worked in advertising to pay the bills while going in and out of New York City to show my portfolio. And, eventually, jobs came my way. And eventually, they started to come more regularly.
Yeah.
And that's how I got in.
So call it, Sanchez, or you'll get a knuckle supper.
There you go. And here's James.
Hello, James.
I wanted to ask you, when you were before you went to Kubrick school and you were in high school, did you do any self-publishing at all? Any zines or anything like that? Yeah. When you were before you went to Kubrick school, did you do? So you were just doing a bunch of spec material on pages and stuff then?
Oh, I was just drawing assignments for classes.
Oh, great. Okay.
I was drawing on desks and getting detentions.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
How was your experience at the Kubrick school when you were able to go when you had enough money?
It was great. I met a lot of lifelong friends there. I learned a lot. A lot of it is just doing. When you're being guided by people who know what they're doing, but you just have to keep doing it. The workload is intense. It's not like you're doing algorithms or math or anything like that, but the workload is intense. You're up all hours drawing and honing that skill, Yeah,
you're at the board like 12, 16 hours a day.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Would that be like at the beginning, was that like a page for you or 2 pages? like when you're at the board for like 10 or 12 hours, or it depends upon the page?
It depends upon the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still depends upon the page, really.
Okay. So how did you break into DC Comics? Or what was your first paying gig?
My first paying gig was at DC Comics.
Yeah.
It was 2 classroom assignments that the teacher, Sal Amendola, who also happened to be the new talent coordinator at DC Comics, he had a book called New Talent Showcase, and he bought 2 of my stories that were classroom assignments to run in that comic.
Oh, nice.
And that was my my first sale. And Sal was great as far as mentoring me, like getting me up to DC, getting me in and backstage, and getting to meet and introduced to editors and like Dick Giordano and Julie Schwartz and all those people.
Yeah. I want to drill your head about working underneath those guys and working with those guys. That would have been quite, because you were there at like a seminal time. When did you start at DC?
1983, I think, was my first sale.
So you were there for like the big decade and a half, almost 2 decades, pretty much.
Yeah.
So then you worked on Nightfall and stuff, but we'll get into that. So after Kubrick School and after DC, you went on and well, you were talking about. I'm glad you picked up Robot Monster. That was great, because when I first put up that intro, Edward's like, "What the heck is that?" I'm like, come on, it's a comic Robot Monster. It's one of the best movies. Can you tell us a bit about Monster Island?
Yeah, Monster Island was first published in 1998 because at that point I was disenchanted by what Marvel and DC were publishing. I felt the comics were becoming overly sexualized and overly violent. And we're talking about basically kids material, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I had young daughters at the time, and DC used to send me a box of everything they published every month. And I would have to cull through those books to find the stuff that was appropriate to give to my daughters.
Right.
And I thought that was sort of sad, like when I was a kid, and if I wasn't feeling well, my mom went out to get me some comics. She could just pick off the stand. She didn't have to look through Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, you name it. She knew they would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Conan was the only one. Savage Sword of Conan was the only one that gave her pause. But being a good mom, she got it for me anyway.
Yeah,
I got to see those titties.
That was a weird time with the big 2. There was a lot of sex appeal and scantily clad women. I remember I don't know if you ever heard of Lethargic Comics. Greg Highland. It was independent. He used to go to the cons, and he self-published with a bunch of other guys, Steve Riemann and everything. And they used to do a bunch of parodies on that time in the comic industry, right? And when the Image guys came out, and you had to stand in line, $100 for an autograph for Liefeld and McFarlane and stuff. That was all of that time in comics.
It brought in this sort of rock star mentality, and money is always a game changer, and real big money was being made at that time, and I think it brought in people with less talent or less drive, or a love of the art form into comics, because they felt, oh, I want to be this rock star, this comic book rock star, whereas I got in because I love the art form. And all of my heroes were workmen, whether they could have been bricklayers for the way they approached, it was a job to put food on the table and to feed your family. And they approached it as such, but there was still an underlying love of the art form, but it was never to, cut a movie deal, or they never got into it for that, or to have tons of money, because they knew there wasn't any in it.
Yeah,
exactly.
So with Monster Island, I decided, well, I want to publish something that I can give to my daughters to read, that I could also give to my friends to read, to enjoy on a completely different level. A really true all ages comic without the pejorative sense of talking down to the reader.
Yeah.
So I did. I wrote, illustrated, and published Monster Island in 1998 just for that reason. My timing was bad because that's when everything started to crash, from the 90s crash. But it's had life since then too, so which is good.
Yeah, it's the artwork is absolutely great. I'm gonna actually pull it up here. So I remember when that came out, that stuff wasn't really being done anymore. Like we said, like it was all just kind of clad women and guys with big guns and attitude, and a lot of Wolverine knockoffs. But yeah, there it is. That was beautiful. So
yeah, that's not the original one. That was a reprint version.
That was a reprint.
Yeah, yeah, from 2000 and something. And then there's hardcovers too that came out 2 years ago from Ominous Press.
What when you worked with? How was it working with Ominous Press?
It was great. Yeah, it was great. They handled a lot of the. It gave me a taste for crowdfunding, because but they handled a lot of that stuff.
Well, that leads me to my next question. What do you think of all this Kickstarter and Indiegogo stuff? There it is, the hardcover.
Yeah, and that's the sequel to the original Monster Island, Return to Monster Island.
Nice.
I think it's a wave of the future. And I'm trying to encourage friends of mine that are holding out hope for this dying a paradigm that's out there with these two major companies.
The big two, as Shaky Kane would call them.
Yeah, exactly. They are the big two, and they've run the show and they've set all the rules for over 80 years. And now they've got people running the companies that don't really have love for the characters and or the art form. They're more concerned with their own ideology, and that's what they're pushing. And the sales are tanking.
Well, do you think the kind of now most people I know they tend to be younger than me, tend to buy comic books like on Kindle or something like that. Do you think that has something to do with it as well? Is that there's a move away from the physical and more to the digital medium, especially in comic books?
I don't think digital sales are all that great. So I would say no. I would say that the bulk of readers that are actually reading comics are old school guys. They're guys in their 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and up that like the tactile, feel and the collecting aspect of a comic. Young people that are reading it digitally, they're not paying for that stuff. Just like they get everything on they don't want to pay for it. I don't think that's really it. I think it's more a concern with getting readers to buy the physical copies and giving something for them to fall in love with, so that they can carry that with them in the future.
How do you think? What was your thoughts on the big prints of the books when DC put them out in Walmart? Was it last year or 2 years ago?
The 100-page giants, those throwback things.
Do you think that was like a failed experiment, or how do you think? Because they didn't last very long.
No, and they also were printing or putting stuff there that sort of went against what Walmart was representing too. They're scantily clad, overly violent stuff that is not the Walmart audience, and it's not, so I don't know the ins and outs of how that deal went down or how it collapsed, but I do know that Allegiance Arts, Mitch and Elizabeth Breitweiser, have a unique and a deal with Walmart.
Yeah, that was fantastic when I saw that. When that blew up on social media, I was so happy for them.
Yeah, and they're in thousands of locations. Their comics are there, affording young readers the opportunity to accidentally discover comics, which is how it was before the direct market came in. Once the newsstand sales stopped and direct market was the primary source for selling comics, you couldn't come across a comic by accident. You had to actively seek it out. If you didn't know it existed, how could you accidentally how could you seek it out?
Right.
So we had a stagnation of readership, and in fact, a readership fall off, and particularly after the 90s, where everything was about, the big shill, the collectability, the foil stamp covers, the multiple covers, and the splash pages, pin-up pages with no story, all that crap.
But they had signatures on them.
Well, those readers got, like white bread, and they grew out of white bread, and nobody wants to return to white bread. The way that, like, if you grew up in the 60s and 70s, let's say you got into sports and girls and all that kind of stuff, and then you came back to comics, you came back because you loved them and you had fond memories and there was nostalgia for it. That generation was lost. There was no nostalgia for that.
Yeah.
And how do you think Image is doing now? Do you think they're representing that unique the stories and the graphic novels, or do you think they're just like it's a factory manufactured to get film deals and miniseries?
I really don't know. I've never had any experience working with Image Comics. They do have a diverse line. I'll give them that, which I like. And what I'm doing with my stuff is I'm not competing in the superhero market with my Compass Comics stuff. And they don't seem to be doing. I don't know if they even do superheroes. I guess they do. I guess because
they do a bit. A lot of it's a lot of horror too, and suspense, and
that's all good sellers. But I don't know.
All the superhero stuff they do tends to be Mark Millar stuff now, and and
Eric Larson.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like, for me, the most interesting comics that have come out recently have been Image comics. So like the Brian K. Vaughan stuff, and a lot of the stuff that he's been doing recently, and Saga and things like that. And that's all Image. It's very different from what Image was originally. I feel like they're really trying to push like that they're an independent comic book company. They're not, but that's the kind of image they're trying to give. So I mean, the funny thing is, I mean, when I look at your type of artwork, I actually do think it would fit quite nicely in with what Image is doing at the moment. I do think there's a fit there, especially with Alien Alamo, what you're doing there. Cool. I don't know if that's what you think. You probably disagree, but
no, I mean, because I don't look at a lot of comics, so I really don't know what's out there as far as Image goes. I stay on the periphery. I read about them, but I don't buy them per se because I just don't have the room for them anymore.
Right.
I've had to do a massive downsizing. If you see above my head this side, my comic book collection used to be the whole thing behind me, and I've had to really just reduce it to half a thing because I move around a lot. But it's like, and that's another reason why I was talking about digital earlier, is because I am now someone that I do purchase my comic books digitally. I purchase them. And it's just the kind of way it has to go for me, because I just don't have the space. Especially if you live in Paris in a small small studio, it's like there's just not the space anymore, unfortunately.
Well, sure. I live in like a small town of 10,000 people, and there's not even a comic book store here, so I'm kind of like shriveling up. So I do buy them digitally, but then I wait in the mail for the hard copies to come. Right?
Gotcha.
There's something about. I
remember you're in Canada, right, James?
Yeah, I'm in Alberta right now.
So, yeah, I could tell by the accent.
Oh, hey. The only accent if you don't live here. But some in the 90s, like when I was self-publishing and stuff, there was always a treat to get other books in the mail, like once a week, every few days, and I really miss that. And I think that's what's good about the Kickstarter and the Indiegogos now. It's kind of it's taken that self-publishing to like a 2.0, 3.0 thing. But are you worried about oversaturation that way? I mean, like you've got your cred and you've got your history and your experience. I mean, your Alien Alamo, you've reached over 100 grand right now, right?
No, it's at 80
or 85,000.
Yeah, 85, 80. No, it's 86, I think.
I'm talking in Canadian currency, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Yeah,
it's okay, eh? But you gotta worry. Like it's really easy. I was talking to Edward about this last night. Because when you independently publish your comic books in the 90s and in the early 2000s, is you saved up $1,000. You know, you did the work yourself primarily, or it was you and another guy, right? And you pencil ink and put it out and send it off to Quebec or in Quebec, and they print it. And then you go to cons and you'd sell it and hope to sell 800 issues so you can do another print run of 1,000. Do you think a lot of these comic book artists, they're not aware of how lucky they are with Kickstarter or Indiegogo? You know, do you think it just it gets so? I'm getting a little tongue tied here, but do you think there's a risk of oversaturation and with Kickstarter and Indiegogo to be misused? Like the same as when the 90s hit with Image, you know, because I'm seeing a lot of adult scantily clad books out on Kickstarter these days.
Yeah.
And in Indiegogo, right? I mean, there's a market for everything.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think the best use of this new paradigm is to consider your comics as boutique comics. Is like I'm trying to compete with Image or Marvel or anything and publish floppies. The way I approach it is that each published book is an event, and that event is something to celebrate. Right. And you bring the readers in and create an atmosphere around it, and you develop the campaign so that there's all kinds of goodies that go with it, so that price point that they're paying for that comic now becomes very reasonable because of all the other stuff they're getting that comes with it. And it's also about bringing the backers into the creative process too. They're a part of it, you know. It doesn't go on without their help. And I think it's important to keep them up to date on the campaign. I update my backers every single week and let them know what was accomplished, where we are, how we're moving on schedule, and all that kind of stuff. And so that creates this whole atmosphere, this whole kind of party, let's get on board this together atmosphere. And you have full access to me, the creator, which you don't get, you know, from the big two or any other publishing. So, you know, at least the way I look at it is I'm creating these boutique events of boutique comics that are surrounded by an event.
Nice. And it's kind of like the letters page in the back of the books expanded like tenfold, right? And having access to the creators is really beneficial too, especially to drive those funding campaigns, I can imagine. So can you tell us a bit about Compass Comics? When did that start?
Well, that started in 1998 to produce Monster Island. I formed the company then to use as my publishing arm. And then I went back to, you know, corporate comics and newspaper strips and that kind of stuff. And then, well, this is going to dovetail into the whole crowdfunding thing. I did a job for Chuck Dixon and Richard Meyer called The Expendables Go to Hell. And that was the first time I ever was involved in a project that was being crowdfunded.
I was going to ask you about that. That was last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I finished it. I don't know why it's not out yet, but you know, I finished it a year ago before I started the Chinook. So regardless, you know, I had done crowdfunding. Chuck and I tried to crowdfund a book called Joe Frankenstein a few years earlier, and that went nowhere. You know, because we just weren't versed in crowdfunding. We didn't understand some of the nuances and ins and outs of building your audience. We thought that perhaps our name and our cachet would bring the people in, and that isn't how it works. So, like, you know, any of you guys that are out there that have worked for the big two, you know, do not. There's only a handful of people whose names might draw in, you know, enough backers to make it worth your while, but there's so much more to it than that. You have to be out there and engage with the readership, and they're out there on YouTube and they're out there on social media, and you constantly have to be mining that.
And you got to fight against that Facebook algorithm too.
Well, you know about that. I'm constantly railing against that.
Oh man, do I ever? Do I ever? Okay, so Alien Alamo, or like, do you want to get into Batman first and Bane?
Sure.
Speaking of Chuck Dixon.
Yeah, sure. We can talk about that.
So how were you? Were you already working on the Bat series when the Nightfall was coming on, or were you approached?
I think I had done. A couple fill-in issues on Detective Comics. You know, the timeline's a little sketchy because it's so long ago. I can't remember which came first, but I'm pretty sure that I had done like 3 or 4 issues of Detective Comics. In fact, I'm sure of it now. So my foot was in the door in the Bat offices, and they had been talking about Nightfall at that point, and so I got a call from. I think Scott Peterson, who was my editor on Detective, and asked me if I wanted to, work on this book called Vengeance of Bane, which was going to be introducing this new character that I would have to design. And so I called Chuck, because Chuck and I were friends before we even worked on that stuff. He told me he was writing it and all that, and what it was going to be about. And I said, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And he hooked me and actually suggested me to Scott Peterson because he knows I'm a huge Doc Savage fan.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole pitch for Bane was he's the evil Doc Savage. And I'm like, I'm in.
That's a good pitch.
Yeah. So that's how I came on board. And then, Chuck and I talked back and forth about the needs of the character, because this is the first time a villain was given his own book, had never appeared before. And so we had to make this character out of the gate interesting enough and dangerous enough and intriguing enough that he could set up the whole Nightfall thing, because without that, everything's going to fall apart. So, we knew Venom. Venom was created by Denny in a Legends of the Dark Knight book when Batman was trying to look for an edge, and he got hopped up on that. So we were going to use Venom as an aspect of the character of Bane too. And this is sort of the Count of Monte Cristo type of feel too. He was going to be raised in this prison, evil Doc Savage raised in the Count of Monte Cristo prison type thing. And it was this podunk little banana republic island called Santa Prisca.
Santa Prisca, yeah.
And so, or is that the name of the?
That's the name of the bungalow in Gotham, but I also believe the island was also called Santa Prisca.
Yeah. And Penadora was the prison. Yeah. So, so understanding that, I decided, well, if I'm going to give him a costume, I'm going to base it on Mexican luchador because it's the South American or south of the border. Things he'd be exposed to if he was exposed to anything, to create to try and give some type of logical idea for why he'd create a costume for himself. I mean, the simple answer was because we needed a character that we could trademark, and he needed a costume, and all of that, and it was the 90s. So so that was part of it, of why I went in that direction, that luchador wrestling look.
Well, I think it was executed really well, because if you look, like when the Superman versus Doomsday came out, right? He didn't really have much of a backstory. He just kind of like appeared out of nowhere, broke himself out of the cell, and then there was a big fight. But with the Bane, like the way Chuck Dixon wrote it and the way he created it, he had a sense of intrigue and planning, and he had his henchmen like Bird and all of them. It was executed well, and I remember when I was reading Nightfall, and then it was after the death of Superman. It's like, this is how you introduce a villain out of nowhere that can actually take on the character you've been reading for decades, right? Because everyone was like, "Oh, who's this Doomsday guy that came out?" Like, no offense to Jerry Ordway or any of those, like John Bogdanovich, like they did a fantastic job. It's just that was just a villain for the sake of the villain for Superman to die. But with a Bane, like, you guys created a character that's lived on, and he's branched off to the animated series. It was great to see him in that. And then obviously the Dark Knight Rises.
Tom Hardy,
yeah. So, and then Batman and Robin too, right?
Yep.
So that was good. What did you think of Joel Schumacher's version of Bane?
Well, at least he looked more like Bane, even though he was a big dummy. The Tom Hardy thing, he sounded like Bane, but didn't look like Bane. And then when we get to the end of the movie, we find out, yeah, he's just a big dummy.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a fan of that one either.
They did it justice in the Batman the Animated Series, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great one, and they also gave him his Latino accent too. You know, Henry Silva did the voice for that one, and recently I think it was Young Justice that Danny Trejo did the voice, and he was awesome as Bane. You know, because I could see that, you know, that guy's the real deal.
Yeah, he was in prison and everything, and then he cleaned up. Yeah, and was there anyone that you saw that you'd want to play Bane in the feature film?
Well, I thought Dave Bautista.
Dave Bautista, yeah. He's desperate. He's desperate to play it. You haven't
he
spoken
is.
to
I've read all that, you know, and
he hasn't reached out to you, has he?
He has not, and DC never reaches out to us either. So
no. That's a shame. So you were going to say something, Edward. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, the thing I remember about The Dark Knight Rises was that they did try and do the backstory justice. Like they did put him in a prison, and kind of they didn't really explain where he was, but you know, and there was the whole breaking of the back scene that was very Nightfall.
That was kind of cool. I'll say that when I saw that in the theaters and saw the breaking of the back thing, I thought, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
There's the panel I drew, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
What was
actually,
it like
I didn't draw the back-breaking scene. Jim Aparo did.
Oh, Jim Aparo, yeah. You've worked with him, or you've worked around him quite a bit. How can you tell me how that was? Like, because you guys have two different distinct styles.
Well, I think we come from the same place, though. I just did a whole show on Jim on my Wednesday night show called The Storytellers, and Jim was just such a great guy and a great artist. And, you know, I struck up a great friendship with him, you know, talking with him every week, and not even about comics. I mean, all of our talks were about Seinfeld and nonsense shit, you know, which is funny. Now that I think back, it's like, geez, I should have asked him more questions about comics, you know?
There you go. One question I think I had was, what's it like knowing that you have? I mean, Bane is one of the most now iconic DC Comics villains. Like, yeah, and what's it like knowing that you had a hand in that, and that you were at the kind of the very beginnings of that character?
Well, like I said earlier about those guys, you know, that considered, you know, that think of it as a job. And think of it, you know, no different than if they were bricklaying or digging a ditch. You know, when I was working on it, it was a job, and you always hope that everything that you create will kick and resonate with the public, and you just never know if it will, if it'll catch that lightning in a bottle. Bane ended up catching it. And you know, through the years, you know, it's been really cool to see him keep going and become now a pop culture icon. You know, it's a little weird.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, I've got the first sketch of Bane sitting in right over there in my sketchbook.
It must be like completely bonkers. I spoke to.
Can we see it, Graham?
What's that?
Can we see it?
All right, hold on.
All right.
Oh dear. And there you can see that's the some of his artwork for Alien Alamo. Graham's artwork just behind there. Compass Comics. I'm trying to fill in time.
I never. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
There you go. That's some of James's humor.
All right, here's my sketch.
Oh, okay, wow.
It's an old Strathmore sketchbook.
Oops.
And there's the first drawing of Bane.
Oh, nice.
Right there.
Screenshot that.
Already done.
And here's a first sketch of Zombie and Trog.
Mm,
awesome.
that's so good.
I love how you designed Zombie. How you drew Zombie. It was so menacing.
There's Bird.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's it. And what's really neat is that I mean, I nailed about 90% of Bane in that first drawing.
Yeah, you did. You literally did.
The only major differences are, I had a lot more wires and ports going into him.
Yeah.
And I had a real luchador mask. You can see his eyes, his nose, and his mouth are exposed. Because if you've ever had to wear a mask, we all have had to wear a freaking mask for last year. It's a pain in the ass, and it's hard to breathe. Yeah. And if you're exerting yourself, that's really hard. So, I thought, he's gonna, have that cut out. But DC decided they wanted the mystery man type thing and cover his face up.
You're probably one of the first comic book artists to actually think about that as far as a character is concerned, because everyone has their mouths covered. I think we have some questions from the viewers. So Jedi Master EJ asks, who is Graham's favorite comic book character of all time? In with the
I don't have one favorite. I mean, Superman and Batman were certainly the first two that I fell in love with. I love the Thing from the Fantastic Four. Yes. I love Captain America. I love pulp characters, Tarzan, Conan, and Doc Savage. So yeah, I can't really say that I have one favorite.
Yeah, that's always like a what's your favorite color type question. It's like, well, I don't really have one.
That one I do. It's green.
Oh, you have a favorite color? I don't. I've always found that question really difficult to answer. And what's your favorite film is one that always comes up.
Yeah, that's one I can't really lock down. Favorite monster? I can. Frankenstein. Okay,
Frankenstein. Easy. Frankenstein's monster. Easy.
Have you ever wanted to draw Conan?
I have.
You've worked on a Conan book?
No. I have wanted to do it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
because that's the character that has been very well portrayed in comic books, but they've never. I don't think they've ever nailed it on screen, like Conan the Barbarian. It's like there even. I mean, there was.
Crush your enemies. See them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
Yeah, that's not Conan. And it's not Jason Momoa either.
Enough talk.
The one good Conan was the kid at the beginning of the Jason Momoa film. He was really. Oh no! Just watch that film for the first 11 minutes, I think it is. He is so good.
You got to run with the egg in his mouth.
Yeah. He was really good, and then the rest of the film was just awful. But that's how it goes really with Conan on the big screen for some reason.
What about what do you think of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wanting to play Doc Savage?
Have you heard of that? I don't think that's bad. I think he could do it. He's got some talent as an actor these days. He certainly has the physical attributes. He's got the bronze skin. I would not be against that. I mean, he just couldn't flash that smile of his, and he'd have to tamp it down. But because Doc is not a very emotive character.
No.
So
he's been pushing that for a while. I think with Shane Black, the writer of Predator and director.
They talked. Shane Black was involved for a while, but I think it's a dead property now. But I don't know.
Imagine The Rock with a wig.
Yeah, that's weird. Just imagine him with hair is strange.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Edward.
Well, I suppose a lot of people that are in the comments, right, that watch this show, they love Zack Snyder's Justice League and the Snyderverse. And I suppose a question I have is what did you make of Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Well, I saw both of them, the first one and the one that was on HBO Max, which was considerably better. But it's still way too dark. And he just does not know what to do with Superman. You've got the best actor to come along to possibly ever play Superman. It looks like he stepped right out of a comic book, and they give him nothing to do.
Yeah. I've always felt that about the way they've written Superman in the DCU. I just feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Because you really feel. But one thing I will give, like, I felt this when I first watched Man of Steel. I came out of that movie thinking that was a real missed opportunity. And you look at what DC have been doing with Superman. He looks fantastic. He sounds great. He's, as you said, he's actually made for the part. And then you look at what Marvel has done with Captain America, and they're very similar characters. Yet for some reason, Captain America just works so much more in.
Wow, what can I say?
It's I don't know what it. I think it's just writing. I think it's a problem with the writing.
It is. It is writing, and it's understanding the character. Captain America, they got down to the roots of who that character is, what drives that character. And yes, he's awkward in the 20th century and a little naive, but he's no dummy and he's nobody to be made fun of.
Yeah.
You know, the man's a soldier. He's a super soldier. And the same thing for Superman. You know, Superman is not, even in the Richard Donner film, you know, where they really exploited the whole idea of the Blue Boy Scout, which I don't necessarily agree with entirely. I don't think Superman is a Boy Scout in that he's so goody-goody. You know, you look at the early Superman stories and, you know, he had a lot of righteous indignation and, you know, went after bad people. And, you know, I really, and the Max Fleischer cartoons of Superman, you know, I love those. I love the George Reeves Superman show, you know, where he's a two-fisted reporter too, you know. That's the Superman that I like to see.
Yeah,
I guess the real question would be, what did you think of our History of the Snyderverse video? I'm just joking. You already gave us your review on that.
That's right. I forgot that was you guys.
When the new 52 came out, did you have any thoughts on that, or did you keep up with that at all? No.
I was doing some work on the Blackhawks. I was doing break or layouts for Blackhawks. But that's the only involvement I had in 52.
That's really weird because that was about the height of the Marvel movies, and they got really hopeful and optimistic, and then the comics got really dark, and it was like that shift because the Marvel universe in the comics when I was growing up was pretty dark and aimed to like angst and teens and stuff, and the Justice League and DC Comics is always hopeful and bright and, you know, and then there's that switch. It just kind of threw me. So, but shall we talk about Alien Alamo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't we show the video?
Okay. Yeah. Let me grab up close some tabs here.
It'll give people a taste of what it's about.
Yeah.
Before we talk about it.
Are we going to get a copyright strike?
God, I hope not.
Only if I file it. It's mine.
Yeah. Well, this has happened to us before where we've put people's music on that they own and we've got copyright strikes from people on Facebook. So I don't understand.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's happened to us before. Nice.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah.
We've got people in the comments saying that here Graham makes the best trailers.
Thank you, Dr. Mask.
And this looks dope, says Tom Fox. Yeah,
and of course,
it
Kazakh.
looks.
This music is a bit too violent for him.
Yeah, well, Kazakh likes to joke around, so don't take him too seriously.
I get it. Yeah, yeah, but it's a really cool, fun story. I'm building a universe. My Compass Comics universe is as I mentioned, I was into monsters, and so my universe is going to revolve around the supernatural, science fiction, monsters, horror, that kind of stuff. The first book I did was the Chenoo, which was a horror comic. This one is more like a sci-fi Western, but it also touches on themes of relationships between father and son, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so there's some heavier themes that are still wrapped around the story of these guys, the metaphor of the Alamo, of them being overrun by these aliens on their ranch, which is called the Alamo.
Nice.
It's such a good idea for a comic book, I have to say.
Can you tell us a bit about the Tobias character? Tobias?
Tobias? Yeah, Tobias Bedecker, named after Bud Bedecker, who was a director of great westerns in the 50s, particularly with Randolph Scott. And but his look is based on Sam Elliott.
I was going to ask, is it Sam Elliott?
Yeah, it's based on Sam Elliott. And Travis Houston, the father, the World War II vet there, he's based on John Krasinski. You know, because I wanted somebody like John Krasinski has that hound dog look, like he has almost a sad, world weary look. Like if you ever saw him in the Jack Ryan show. Yeah. And that's what I was going for. I was going for a guy who's been scarred by his experiences in the Pacific. So I wanted a look that, you know, looked a little world weary.
Yeah, it definitely comes off that. I have to say the minute I saw the Tobias, I was like that is Sam Elliott. I could imagine him like that, just in that role as well, with the kind of gruff voice, the Sam Elliott voice. I think would be pretty much perfect for that character. Yeah.
Jedi Master EJ says he loves westerns and sci-fi. Sounds awesome. Get on the page and back at Jedi Master EJ. Get your copy reserved, my friend.
So, do you have any westerns that influence this, like besides?
My initial start to this project was basing it on the Rifleman.
You know, I was going to ask you that with Tom Connors, because you mentioned Bud Bedecker? Bud Bedecker, yeah. Yeah. And I think he directed a couple episodes of The Rifleman. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'll
have to check that out.
I don't think I've seen him listed as a director, but
I'm a huge fan of The Rifleman, so I was gonna, when you mentioned the 50s, I was gonna ask you about that.
Chuck Connors and Johnny Crawford. In fact, The Boy is based on Johnny Crawford.
Oh, really? Nice.
You know, I love that series. It was such a well-written half an hour, you know, or really 25 minutes, I guess you'd say. You know, there's no fat in any of these stories. They get right into it. And I love that. And, you know, I love that Lucas McCain was, you know, just this regular guy, God-fearing guy trying to raise his kid. You know, he fought in the Civil War, but he's known as the Rifleman because he's like the badass with a rifle. He's faster than guys with pistols with his rifle. And, you know, the best part about every episode is he's going to shoot somebody.
Someone's either going to rise up and challenge him or roll in the town. And
or he's got to use that rifle in 99% of the episodes, you know. But it was really the relationship of him and his son in that show that inspired me to write this series.
Nice. Is the boy going to try and come up with an invention for a dishwasher?
Now that's somebody who's watched the show.
Oh yeah. I used to watch it all the time with my mother, and then
he hated washing.
Then it came out on Amazon Prime, and I just started binging it like crazy. It's like, oh, I get to watch this from the beginning and not just on MeTV, you know, right? So absolutely great. And I wish I hope they don't remake it, but if they do, then they have to keep it serialized like that. It can't be a feature film or anything. Like it's timeless, you know. So that's exciting to hear that you based the kid off Johnny Crawford. And so, do the story elements borrow anything from the Rifleman at all, or is it just the character?
Just the how I perceive or how I'm trying to portray their relationship. You know, the Johnny Crawford or Mark McCain was like the perfect son. You know, it's like this kid that every father wanted as a father. But I wanted to put some drama into it, so I needed to have them not be that perfect. I needed to have something wedged in between them, something that was preventing them from having that Rifleman relationship. And so that's why I said it in 1957 for two reasons. One, because I wanted to explore PTSD in World War II vets. And that was what was going to be the wedge that was keeping those two from really coming together in a healthy relationship. So it's something that Travis has to overcome. And the alien invasion helps him do that. And then the other reason is because I wanted to tie it in with America's beginning of going into space. It was in 1957 is when Sputnik was launched, right. And so it's Earth's first entry into space, and this is space coming back to us. At the same time with these aliens. So that's why I sent it in 1957 and why, and also to set up that wedge in their relationship as opposed to making it modern.
Yeah, that's got to be like, it's kind of like the Star Trek Next Generation or the original series. It's hard to create conflict when all the characters are so enlightened, right? So you have hurdles trying to find the static. So I think that sounds like the right approach between that relationship and the son and the father. Do you have any sci-fi influences or homages you're going to be paying to like the 50s monster movies in the early 60s?
There's going to be a bit of a homage to Them, the James Arness film. Yeah. And if you noticed in the video, the burn through was directly inspired by my favorite movie, The Thing from Another World. So
the original one, not
the original 1951. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's that. Well, I mean, the thing I was thinking about when James sent me the Indiegogo campaign, I was like, really, there's a lack of like genuinely good sci-fi western like mashup like things, especially recently. I was trying to think of something that's been done recently, and I struggled, and I was like, well, Cowboys versus Aliens or whatever it's called. That was the only one that came out, and I was like, that was awful.
That was terrible.
Yeah,
that was terrible.
So it's just nice to see someone tackle it, because I think it's a genre in itself that has a lot of potential, but for some reason people aren't doing it.
This has three of my favorite genres in it: westerns, science fiction, and there's even a war scene. So World War II scene, you know, where Travis is flashing back, where he has to go into a cave to clear it out for Japanese soldiers, and he has a horrific experience when he goes in there, and that comes into play when we are in 1957, and something similar. He has to go into a cave then too, and so yeah.
What were you keeping in mind when you were writing the tone of this book?
Well, I always want my books to be fun. You know, no matter how serious and dark they may get, they have to still be fun. Even with the Chenoo, which was definitely an R-rated horror comic, and that's how I wrote it. You know, there's moments of humor in it, and there's characters in situations which are fun to follow. And that's sort of the motivating force for me is to make sure that these books are entertaining, because that's what you're That's what you're paying for. That's what readers want. They don't want to be hit over the head with political polemics or any of that nonsense. You know, they're shucking down some money. They want to be entertained first and foremost. And so that's what I concentrate on.
Nice.
That's perfect.
How long did it take you from start to finish for Alien Alamo?
Still working on it.
Still working on it.
Yeah. I'm just about at the halfway mark as far as production of pages.
Do you draw digitally now, or do you just work just digitally?
I work on an iPad Pro using Procreate.
Oh, great.
Oh, cool.
How's that workflow for you? Like, when did you transition into that? Because I always used to pencil and ink, just old school. And then I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago, I got a Huon tablet. It saves a lot of time, but I do miss the pencil and ink, you know?
I miss the tactile feel of a brush and ink and stuff, but the speed of which I can ink now and the brushes I can put effects in and stuff is just so much easier to do. I don't need to clog up my studio with more original artwork. I've got 38 years of it, so I don't need that. I started using it for the first time on my humor strip, The Sunshine State, because it was simple and the demands of the art weren't as great as doing something like for a comic book. But when I started working on The Expendables Go to Hell, that was my first challenge to work completely digitally, because it was so reference heavy. Of just because it takes place in hell and they're coming across soldiers and creatures and stuff from all kinds of time periods and places. So, and not to mention uniforms, costumes, accoutrements, and then facial likenesses of the actors when they appear.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the most reference heavy book I've ever worked on. And I figured there's no friggin' way I'm going to be able to do this with pictures stacked all over the place, and it'd take me forever. So I decided, well, I'll pull the trigger and see if I can't get this done digitally, and thank goodness it worked out.
Great. You gotta find out when we can see that book.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the holdup is, to be honest.
I'll start messaging Chuck and bother him about it too. So when's your target date for Alien Alamo?
December.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. And how many pages?
64.
64.
Yep.
Awesome.
That was a stretch goal. It was originally 52, and now it's going to be 64.
Okay.
And are you planning to do more after that? Would you like to do like a continuation of the series?
No. One of the things I'm doing is I'm not doing sequels. So the Chinook was done. Alien Alamo will be self-contained. The next book is called The Ghosts of Matacumba Key, which will be a ghost story.
Ooh.
But what I'm doing is I'm weaving in characters into this from my universes together. So at the end of Alien Alamo, the end of Alien Alamo is going to take place in 2021. And we're going to see James as an old man. And he's going to have a connection with the character from the Chinook, who's going to be the lead in The Ghost of Matacumba Key.
Awesome.
Nice.
That is such a good idea, I have to say. That's a really good way of just keeping yourself kind of fresh as well, not get too bogged down by one particular franchise or whatever, but keep it all within the same universe and all connected is something that keeps readers reading, basically. That's a really good idea.
Exactly. You know, they take a liking to these characters, and then they'll get to see them evolve and do other things outside of where we first met them.
Yeah.
So that's the connection I want to have, you know, outside the umbrella of genres that my universe is going to contain. It's those interconnecting characters that are going to come in and out of these various stories, which I think will be really fun and interesting. And you hit it on the head, Edward, as far as like keeping it fresh. You know, it takes me 8 months to produce one of these comics, 8-9 months, something like that, because I have to write it, illustrate it, I have to promote it, I have to fulfill it and publish it and all that kind of stuff. So all these different hats get worn. So it's a long time to be spent on it. And then to have to go back and do a sequel now and draw the same characters in the same type of settings, I find that it might get tired looking. Whereas like if I do these one-offs like this, I'm jazzed and pumped right from page 1 to page 64. And then I can go like this and then focus on the next one.
Yeah.
Well, in between, you write the screenplay and you send it to Sam Elliott, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We have one other interesting question here from Dr. Masks Retro Lex. Is any Alien Alamo beer coming?
I did a Chinook brew beer. I teamed up with a brewery, and we produced this Imperial Stout to warm your bones in the cold of winter when the Chinook is out trying to get your heart.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, it was great. The fans loved it, and I sold the beer cans as part of the. But I was originally wanted to sell the beer. Then I found out there was postal regulations. I couldn't sell. I couldn't mail the beer, so I had to dump those cans. But there were holes in them now, so they weren't collectible. So I had the brewery filled new cans with the labels with water.
Okay.
I shipped the cans that way so that you could have the two different cans, and they were both signed by me. But there's no beer in them. The short answer to that is no. I don't have anything lined up for Alien Alamo beer just yet, because it was a lot of work to do the other one.
Yeah. You used to be able to mail live baby chicks in the mail.
No, you can still do that.
Can you still?
Yeah, you can still do that. I think John Oliver did a whole thing about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you can't mail beer.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Somebody explained it to me. It had to do with prohibition laws that are still on some states' books.
Well, I was thinking, it's definitely okay to mail beer in the UK because there are companies that do it. so
yeah.
And
breweries can, and there are companies that can ship the beer, but personal citizens cannot.
Okay.
You have to have a license, a special license to ship alcohol.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
But I wanted a 30-30 since I was a kid. Call back to Rifleman.
I met Chuck Connors, and I had him sign my 30-30 Winchester.
No.
Yeah.
Where'd you meet him?
I had dinner with him. He was the guest at a show that we were both guests at, and the producer of the show sat us next to each other for dinner, and we had a ball.
Oh.
We just hit it out, hit it up great. I was asking him all kinds of questions about the show and working with John Wayne and all this stuff. And, it was just fantastic. So the next day at the show, I bring in a scabbard and I pull it open. I throw my 30-30 in front of him, and he goes, "Holy shit, that's a real 30-30." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I don't know if I've ever signed a real rifle." He signed kids' rifles and stuff like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm completely jealous now, Graham.
You want to see it?
Sorry, go ahead. Yes, I do.
It's right here.
It's got all the props. Oh wow. That's cool. And that's you can see it, yeah. That's a real rifle.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Is it modified?
I don't have the loop. I don't have the arms either. I mean, you got to have some long arms to be able to use that loop without knocking your teeth out.
Right.
That is so cool. It's the first time on the show we've ever had a live rifle show. So that's the first.
Well, this is America, so
Yeah. Yeah, it's not legal here. Right.
Thank you, Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've kept you for long enough.
You just get working on that screenplay and get it sent to Krasinski and Sam Elliott.
Yeah, really. I should. Well, you know what I'll do? It's easier. It's just send them the book.
There you go. Well, both.
Yeah.
Then the storyboards are done.
Yeah,
They can see everything.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
But where I suppose before you go, where can people find you? We have got all the links in the description, but if you
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, and I have my own YouTube channel. Just search under Graham Nolan. You'll see it. I do 2 shows every week. The Storytellers on Wednesdays, and the Professionals, which is a shared show that five of us do and rotate each week and just talk about various things, and that's a fun thing. And so that's where you can see me. I'm all over the place.
and all links to Graham are in the description below this video. So thank you so much, Graham, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Oh,
and,
great talking to you too, Edward and James. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I appreciate
no
you
problem.
having on.
Anytime.
The YouTube link is in the description for Graham's channel. Definitely check it out.
Yep.
The last stream you did about the Storytellers was actually fantastic. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and this week, actually tomorrow, I'll be talking with Dennis Cowens.
I know.
So that's going to be a great show. He's an incredible artist.
Great.
Oh.
Awesome.
Look
Okay.
out for that one.
Thank you,
Right.
Graham.
Okay, thank you guys.
And, hit that link in Indiegogo and back Alien Alamo,
Yes.
especially like the Rifleman.
Yes.
Everybody in the chat, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.